Only 2 weeks ago, there was a mass shooting at a high school where 17 people lost their lives. Just over 4 months ago, there was another mass shooting where 58 people were shot while at a music festival. In both of these cases, one man was able to take the lives of many, and these are just two of the latest mass shootings. Are the needs for Americans to own firearms that great that we are willing to sacrifice so many lives? It is well past time for gun reform in this country, but gun reform needs to take place, and we can't afford to wait any longer. Before we get too far along, let's get a brief overview of United States gun rights, their origins, as well as some political background. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution was adopted on December 15, 1791, and states, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed." This amendment is one of the building blocks of our country and is behind every debate involving guns, whether for or against them. On one side, you have those that argue so much has changed in the last 200 plus years that the authors never could have foreseen the issues we have today. While another side will respond that we must abide by the amendment exactly as written. The problem here is no one really knows exactly how the writers of the Constitution intended this amendment to be viewed, or what their views would be present day. The National Rifle Association was founded in 1871 and is a non-profit organization that advocates for gun rights. An article written by Lee Drutman on the Sunlight Foundation website states that in the 2012 elections, 51% of the members of the new Congress received funding from the NRA Political Action Committee at some point in their political careers. The involvement of the NRA within the political system, in many people's opinions, muddies the water when it comes to the intent of our politicians. Now let's look at some statistics about gun violence so we can understand the magnitude of this issue and why it's such an urgent problem. A chart listed on gunviolencearchive.org shows that there were 61,514 acts of gun violence or crime incidents in 2017. That's more than 168 incidences a day involving a firearm in this country. An article in the BBC America's Gun Culture in 10 Charts shows that in 2014 there were over 11,000 homicides where a gun was used. The same article by the BBC also referenced suicides committed with guns. Sadly, over the last several years there's been an average of 22,000 people a year who take their own lives with a firearm, and these numbers are counted separately from violent crimes. This issue is more of an access issue than anything, but I find this to be a shocking number considering it's close to double the amount of homicides committed with a firearm every year. Mass shootings are very much in the public eye and receive more media coverage and more public outrage than the day-to-day gun violence. These mass shootings tend to have more of a lasting impression on people since they involve such a high number of deaths. I think that these types of shootings have more of a psychological effect on people since they happen in an area where large groups of people congregate and where people usually feel safe. They almost have a sort of terroristic mentality associated with them. The amount of crimes committed and lives lost by guns in this country is surprisingly staggering, especially when compared to other developed nations. Let's take a look at a few common theories of where gun reform should start. One of the biggest ways to start comprehensive gun control is to limit access to people who are unfit to carry a firearm. I don't think 18 is a realistic age to allow people to buy guns. Raising the age limit to purchase guns is a good first step. Mental illness in this country is a real issue, and once you add firearms to the equation, it just gets worse. There needs to be heavy restrictions on anyone who has or has a history of mental illness. Limiting types of guns, such as semi-automatic to automatic weapons, may prevent these mass shootings or at least greatly limit the loss of life during one. I don't feel as though there is a need for anyone to own a gun that can be classified by most people as an assault weapon. A graph by CNN in an article titled "How U.S. Gun Culture Compares with the World in 5 Charts" gives several surprising statistics and comparisons. One being that for every 100 people in the U.S., there are 89 guns. I feel that we have to change what is considered the norm in this country. Shootings every day should not be the norm. Mass shootings every month should not be the norm. And seeing guns everywhere should not be the norm. Most of the country does agree that gun reform is needed, Yet when it comes time to make the changes, lawmakers back out under the pressure. We as Americans need to stand together and push for gun control. If you want to see your country, your city, or even your town with less shootings, then we need gun reform. Please sign the petitions in the room before you leave so we can all tell lawmakers that we want change and that we have a voice. Gun reform cannot wait any longer.